Let's look at question number 71. What are the key difference between Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop? I'm sure if you are going to work in Microsoft 365 and your organization uses Windows 365 or AVD or Azure Virtual Desktop, they will definitely ask this question to you. So please learn this. This is kind of like a common question. First of all, let me help you understand what is the main difference. Main difference is fixed pricing on a subscription based model versus pay as you go. Windows 365 is a fixed pricing model. You buy a license and you assign a license to the user. You can anticipate what price it is. It is fixed. You can easily calculate within your budget and things like that. That is not going to change. AVD is a pay as you go because you are building it from scratch. So it can be volatile unless you have a fine-tuned, well-defined, optimized environment with a lot of automation. Very difficult to predict the price. So that is the main difference. Additionally, I have put together a few things to understand few additional aspects. One, the first one, pricing, the fixed one versus the pay as you go. Second is management. Windows 365 is fully managed by Microsoft. So you as a customer, when you opt for Windows 365, you don't have to do a lot of work in the backend because it is already taken care by Microsoft in terms of in the backend on how to deliver that service to you. Wherein if you use Azure Virtual Desktop, you need Azure expertise to manage and maintain consistently, optimize it, security around it, and things like that. Availability of it, I can go on and on, but it requires a lot of expertise from your end to do it. From a user experience point of view, you get a persistent cloud PC with Windows 365 that is always on, dedicated. You don't have to worry about turning it off to save cost because it's a fixed pricing model. You use it or not, you pay that amount. Wherein Virtual Desktop offers both, but mostly it is a pooled instance because that's where the cost saving comes. So if you are providing the virtualized experience to shift workers, after the shift, what the company does is they bring down the pool or number of instances, or they shut down these backend servers to save cost on these resources. And finally, Windows 365 offers the built-in security, wherein Azure Virtual Desktop offer a lot of security as well, but you will have to customize or create a lot of these security. You have to define the security posture there. So use all of these ingredients, but mainly if you don't want to talk about all of this, this is too technical for you as a beginner, then stick to the first point. Tell that, hey, Windows 365 is a fixed pricing subscription model and Azure Virtual Desktop is a pay-as-you-go usage-based model. Question number 72. A remote employee needs access to their cloud PC even in low bandwidth conditions. What are the recommended best practices? So here the interviewer is trying to test your knowledge in terms of how can a user access these Windows 365 and what are the mechanism, things like that. So let me put that point and let's talk about the answer. First, you can tell that use the Edge or remote desktop app. So if somebody is having a problem accessing it via app, they can use the browser, or somebody is having an access with the browser. Like I showed you before, I had some access trouble with the browser, so I immediately switched to the app. So this ensures a stable remote connection. So whatever is working for you, you can use it. Second, you can enable this adaptive graphics mode. This reduces any sort of bandwidth usage while maintaining responsiveness. So when you go to this app or the browser, you can turn on this adaptive graphics mode, which will reduce the bandwidth usage while using it. That is exactly a precise answer what you can give for this low bandwidth condition. So the point number 2 is what you can immediately tell that, hey, you can enable this adaptive graphics mode for low bandwidth conditions. Third is optimize network latency. So this Windows 365 allows you to pick and choose where you want to deploy within the whole Microsoft 365 regions. So to give you an example, if your user is in Australia East and use providing the service from Singapore, then there might be a latency between getting the service from Singapore to Australia East. Wherein in Australia, you can pick the right data center closer to you so that user will not have much latency connecting into these services. So that's how you can frame the answer, by bringing the service closer to where the user is. So let's assume your parent company is in Australia and your remote employees are working from India. Rather than hosting the service in Australia, you can pick a region in India closer to the user, and when a user tries to access it, it comes with less latency for them. They can access the services immediately. Fourth point is use the local resources effectively, so that you can always redirect the printer or USB devices to your local device, so that any sort of that interaction is not going via internet. So if you want to print, you enable the printer redirection. You will be able to print from your local device rather than cloud printing, things like that. So use the combination of all of these points, but make sure to learn the second point, what I said about enabling the adaptive graphics mode, especially for low bandwidth. And the fourth point is also quite important, optimizing the network latency by choosing the nearest Microsoft data center to install or deploy this Windows 365 instance. Question number 73. What are the different Microsoft 365 cloud editions they have? Which business should use? So I haven't talked about this, but there are two different editions you get. Just like Microsoft 365, Windows 365 have two editions as well. By this now you are familiar with this business term. Anytime you hear the business term in terms of licensing, you know that it is applicable only for 300 users. So Windows 365 Business allows for small and medium-sized businesses up to 300 users. It is easy for them to set up and no Azure expertise needed. Wherein the second point is the Enterprise Edition. This allows them for anybody who's more than 300 users, and it has integration with the Microsoft Intune for further customization, management, and for deeper configuration. You can have controls in your Azure to define your security, networking, compliance, things like that. So there are two editions. The straightforward answer is two editions: Business and Enterprise. Business is for small businesses up to 300 users. Enterprise Edition will give you much more control and Intune access for anybody who's got more than 300 users. If you want to know more about these editions, click on this link. I'm sure I put that link rightly. I hope it is going to the right place. So here you can see the main difference between what is business plan, what are the SKUs available compared to business versus enterprise. So you can see that on the left hand side, these are the processing, RAM and storage available, how much it costs, depends on the region where you're looking at. And for the enterprise, you can see there'll be slightly higher SKUs available as well. You can see that it goes up to 16 vCPU with 1 TB storage with 64 GB RAM. Wow. So you can have these different use cases, and based on the use case, you can pick and choose which or the combination of these licenses in your organization, and you can assign it to the user. That is quite cool. So that's how you answer this particular question. Question number 74. How does Windows 365 integrate with Endpoint Manager or Intune? So I kind of demonstrated that to you before to showcase what are the capabilities involved. So when you log into these Intune, it allows you to enforce these security policies. These security policies could be applying compliance policies to your cloud PCs, or the conditional access policy or multi-factor authentication policy, which you can apply to these cloud policies. That can be enforced using Intune. Second, automatic update and patch management. So you can go to these cloud PCs, you can deploy patches directly, or you can configure something called auto patch, which Microsoft will automatically patch these for the customer, so they don't have to do a lot of configuration themselves. Third point, very important point. Third point is this is one of the main point. I think you should talk about this first, because Microsoft Intune allow you to deploy application and manage applications which is installed in the cloud PC. So think of cloud PC as your regular laptop or a desktop which you use in your organization. The only thing is that this coming from the cloud or streaming from the cloud like Netflix. but you still need your application which you can use day to day, right? Like the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook for your email, things like that. So that can be delivered via Microsoft Intune. That can be deployed, that can be changed, that can be uninstalled, they can install the newer version, things like that. All of this is done by Intune. So, or the endpoint manager. So this is the main point you need to talk about first. Sorry that I changed the order into the third, but you should make sure that that should be the first one you are highlighting. That's the main point of Intune. Then using Intune, you will be able to monitor the health of the tool. Like you can check the performance, the latency, the user usage pattern, things like that. All of this can be done in Intune. So Intune is a single place or single pane of glass which you can use to actually go and manage, monitor a lot of things for Intune and deploy stuff as well. So use the combination of all of that, but don't forget the point number 3 about deploying application. That's the best point to get the brownie point. Question number 75. Here, an organization want to enable single sign-on and conditional access for the cloud PCs. How can they configure this on Windows 365? So let me populate the pointers to help you understand. First and foremost, if you want to enable single sign-on, you can enable that in the Azure Active Directory authentication. This enables single sign-on access, or you can go to the Intune portal as well. That will allow you to enable single sign-on. So if a user is signed in to the local device with the same username and password, that user don't have to sign in again to access Windows 365. That is technically single sign-on. So that eliminates the user from signing in multiple times to access the service. Second point is you can configure the conditional access policy to restrict access from user based on identity or device compliance and location, things like that. So that can be done in either Entra ID portal or Azure portal or Intune portal. And finally, you can enable multi-factor authentication just like any other services. We've been talking about this security on every section, and almost all the sections you can see that MFA and conditional access is the main suspects or the main topic. So you know that how important it is for you to understand how to articulate what is multi-factor authentication and what is conditional access and what it is trying to solve. So if you want to read more about it, go and read more. And this information is not sufficient. You can always use Microsoft Learn to learn more about MFA and conditional access.